Hi, good afternoon, everybody in Europe, and welcome everybody to our 5th Gamification Roundtable. This is our online event, which is organized by Games for Business, our company, with the aim to bring gamification experts together and create a platform where opinion leaders can share their views and in a professional discussion format. We, Games for Business, we develop gamification-based solutions mainly for HR purposes in 2 main directions. We develop simulation games for employer branding and recruitment purposes, and our game platform that supports corporate onboarding, learning and development processes. We invite representatives from the enterprise, from the expert, and from the wider sides to our recurring Google Hangouts forum to discuss various application areas in gamification. I recommend all of our viewers to ask questions or post comments, share their views with the hashtag Gamification Roundtable. You can follow our stream of hashtag posts and our conversation on our dedicated website, gamificationroundtable.com. It's right next to our broadcast window if you go to this website. You can also follow this discussion via YouTube. After we finish, the discussion will be available for viewing on our YouTube channel, so you don't have to watch it live if you're not available. Our conversation will revolve around the topic of the gamified learning experience. And let me introduce our invited speakers of today. I will, of course, let them introduce themselves personally as well. We have today Isabel Summit, who is the gamification education lead at SAP Development University, and she is also a respected speaker of many events, such as recently she will be attending the Gamification in HR Summit in Vienna, and she will talk about G-Learning, a gamified team learning experience at SAP. We have Martin Molenaar, who is the manager of Rabobank Gamification Hub, the virtual network, where he works to implement gamification as a business-as-usual practice within his cooperative bank conglomerate that operates in over 48 countries and employs nearly 50,000 people. And last but not least, we have a returning guest, Robert Bence, who is the Director of Human Resource Consulting and International Mobility at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC Hungary. As PwC Hungary works in strategic partnership with our company Games for Business and co-develops the enterprise game platform, he has some first-hand experience about gamification and corporate learning himself. So we will be able to meet actually 2 of our guests at the second Gamification in HR Summit, which I already mentioned in Vienna. It's going to be held between April 27th and 29th, and we, the company Games for Business, will be also present with our stand at the event. For details of the event, please visit gamificationinhrsummit.com to find information. My name is Peter Filak. I am the Business Development Director at Games for Business, and I will be the moderator of this discussion. But let me pass the word to our invited speakers, and let me ask them to introduce themselves to you briefly. Isa, can we start with you, please?
Sure. Thank you, Peter, for your introduction. And very nice that I will see you also in Vienna. So my name is Isa Samet, and I'm working for SAP in Development University, and I have been in contact with gamification since 2012 when we first developed our trainings on awareness on gamification. And I decided that I don't want to hear only about gamification, but to try it out by myself. So we developed in our team G-Learning, which is a gamified online team experience. And it's currently still running, and this is what we'll talk about mostly today.
Thank you very much, Isa. Martin, can you go next?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Well, I've started gamification within Rabobank because I believe there are many applications for it, both in HR as in our core banking processes. So that's why I set up the Gamification Hub, which is a network within our organization to share experiences with gamification and to kickstart new gamification projects. And one of the cases I'll talk about on the HR Summit is our app for our mortgage advisors called iQuest.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to actually meet you there, both of you. And Robert, can you also introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation again. I'm working with many HR consulting projects, and our, let's say, aim as a consulting company is getting into the gamification business more and more. Actually, I have two areas that I'm covering now. One is the user experience, because we have started our own game 4 years ago for employer branding purposes and recruitment in Hungary, together with Games for Business, and now we are extending the game into the CE region. So it's a big year for us. And also, we are providing services, and we try to provide services to clients in this area.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Okay, and today we will be talking about the gamified learning experience, because corporate learning and e-learning are quickly developing and emerging areas everywhere, and lately ever more so in the field of HR as well. And analysts predict that it will become one of the key areas within gamification. Companies, coaches, training providers are all struggling to boost engagement levels and maintain motivation for learning, both in companies and in their clientele. So, but I'm actually interested to hear what your ideas are, how you see this. What do you see as the key challenges in corporate learning in your experience? Isa, can I again ask you to go first?
Sure. So what we see is that with the traditional classroom training, people don't really retain their knowledge for a long time. So if you imagine that they sit there for 5 days in a row, they have only one way of conversation, like a trainer is explaining something, and you return after those 5 days into your job and try that out, what you have learned, then you will see that probably you don't get more than 10% of what you have learned in those 5 days. So this is very sad. And on the other hand, we have those boring e-learnings where you stay always alone. Or also for the companies, the great dependencies on the trainer availability of the location, you cannot, for example, train very small locations in SAP with just classroom trainings, because we have only some small amount of people in the locations. So these are challenges that is not really showing what we should do today, nowadays. So e-learning and classroom trainings is completely over.
Thank you very much for sharing. Martin, how about your bank? What's the situation there? What do you see as key challenges? Martin, can you hear us? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, the connection is still a bit lagging.
Okay.
Well, the reason for us to start with it within the learning context is mostly because there's so much to learn for people, actually, especially in banks, where there's a lot of new regulation to make sure that the bankers and the advisors are following the rules. We found out that it doesn't work anymore by just providing them the content to learn, but you really have to make them curious about what they need to learn and what they need to discover for themselves. So that's why gamification is interesting for us, because it helps people to decide, right,
Martin, I think we lost your voice. Can you hear us? Okay, it seems like you're back. Can you please repeat maybe your last 1 or 2 sentences, because I think...
Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Is this better?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Fine, I think.
Yeah, sorry. So, basically, what we figured out is that it is more important to make people curious about what they still need to learn than just providing them with all this extra information. And that's the main focus of our gamification learning application now, is to make them curious, to make it interesting, instead of just giving them everything they need to learn.
Right. Cool, thank you very much. And Robert, how about you? What do you see as the main challenges or key challenges in corporate learning?
Well, it's pretty connected to what Martin mentioned about the amount of information that people have to learn in the organization. If you combine it with less and less time that is available for this, you are just ending up in a vicious circle. What I see is that corporate management is expecting people to be updated and ready to do the best what they can every moment. But whenever it comes to dedicate some time to learning, then it's always less and less. So I think the biggest challenge is that in the time frame that we can just dedicate to learning, we have to be effective, we have to be engaging, and we have to be able to make people focused on the information that should be absorbed in that smaller time. So I think the biggest challenge is more information, less time. So somehow we should solve this situation.
I see. Actually, you're really right, and yeah, actually, information and time and focus, that people not having enough time and so many things available for them, applications on their cell phone, so many distractions nowadays that they have. But still, it seems like there's several business-to-consumer startups actually who have revolutionized the e-learning industry. You might have probably heard about Duolingo or Code Academy or famous MOOCs. They have done a lot of things to involve people, engage people in learning, and found new ways to make learning motivating for their target audiences again, and have achieved great results. So do you see, can you mention maybe any similar companies in the corporate sector? Are you familiar with any of such examples? Martin, for example, you? Martin, could you hear my question? Did you hear my question?
Sorry, it broke up again. No.
So I was mentioning that there's a lot of great examples in the business-to-consumer sector, like Duolingo, Code Academy, and other examples. And I was wondering whether there are any similar companies in the corporate sector who have similar great ideas about how to change or revolutionize corporate learning.
Well, I see two things happening. You see new companies who come up with new kind of products, so the gaming companies, the gamification companies, or who come up with new ways of learning. And you can also see the traditional e-learning companies who are trying to shift towards these new ways of learning. We work a lot with some partners we've been working for years, and you see that some make the transition to new ways of learning very easily, and some really have problems with it. And then what you usually see then is that they come up with very basic gamification solutions, which don't really tend to hit the mark. It's really like, all right, we try to gamify our experiences now, instead of they really looking at it from a whole new perspective. So sometimes it's even better to get new players in that network instead of just using your older partners for that.
Yeah, I think that's also applicable to these companies that I was mentioning, that they have brought completely new ways, and I think they were fairly like outsiders in the market. It wasn't companies who have been already dealing with, for example, in the case of Duolingo, language training or language teaching, but they revolutionized the market with a whole new perspective, basically on a whole new take on the problem. Robert, maybe, how about you? Do you know any interesting examples in the corporate sector?
Yeah, probably I can mention an example that is not an internal invention or initiation, but something to clients, customers. There's a supermarket chain who introduced distance, let's say, ordering, and you can order some food on the internet and it's delivered home. This is pretty a new approach, and they introduced a little game around it. On one hand, they introduced a kind of a point collection system, so as people have started to use this application, they were able to collect some more points, but I think that's a simple solution. But how they utilize the time is very fantastic, because they have posted out ordering posters in bus stops. While people were waiting for the bus, they were able to try it and, let's say, play and try to use this application, and even calling points, plus ordering goods as well. So this kind of combination of utilizing the time, making people able to try it out and organize a game around it, made it a very effective solution to clients, potential clients.
Interesting, interesting. How about you, Isa? Do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, just what Robert says. We had also a pilot in SAP where I saw that they used gamification, and it was a sports event, and there was some gamification in the break. So this is something also Duolingo that they have very small parts. So this is, I guess, really the secret of those companies. They have really small parts of learning, and people love that. Also events, for example. Some gamified.
I'm sorry, Isa, could I ask you to repeat the last 1 or 2 sentences that you were saying, because your voice was a little bit lagging or kind of lost on the net.
Sure. So what I try to explain is that the secret of such companies is that really they provide the learning in such small chunks that people like to have it, either if it's in any events. So like my example was a sports event, but it could be also some other events where people just learn in between. So just adding a comment to Robert.
Right, right. Yeah, it's. I think it's called bit-sized learning. This sort of phenomenon when you take larger pieces of information and try to have it digested one by one or in smaller pieces, so that people can move from one level to the next in a more easily digestible way. And Isa, what do you think is the role of gamification in corporate learning? How do you see that?
Well, for me, it's definitely I cannot imagine any learning without gamification, because people are so much more motivated, and the way they do in our case is that they learn in teams, and this is something we see in companies because they never have time. They have a full-time job. They don't spend really time for learning, and with gamification, and especially in combination with teams, they really can be so engaged that they stay for a long period of time, like in the weeks, for 1 hour a day, just because some hidden things they don't know in the beginning, or they really want to be. There's a little competition between the teams. So this is something that serves also for their brain, that the brain is always active when they are learning, and they really retain their knowledge being engaged with gamification. The best thing, I guess, is if they don't really know that they are being gamified. So that it's only something they see, they feel, but they don't need to understand completely what are we doing to gamify them. But the feeling they have to be engaged is the most important thing for them, I guess.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I wonder what Robert thinks about this. Do you agree, Robert?
Absolutely. On top of that, even I would say this is the next evolution stage of learning. Because if you look back in time, we started with, let's say, learning from books. Then we had classroom presentations. Then the next generation and evolution was having some interactive trainings with role plays, games. Then the training was put outside into outdoor learnings, it was always a new kind of generation and a new kind of evolution of the learning. Then it was e-learning, which was absolutely a new evolutionary phase. But I absolutely agree with Isa that after a while, e-learning is something which is in the business as usual, let's say, daily business, and now gamification can boost it up. Even the e-learning parts, so complete e-learning should not be gamified. It can happen that some of the chapters or some of the elements are gamified, and the reason why I'm saying it's a new evolutionary phase, because yes, whenever we have changed these kind of evolutionary phases, people didn't realize that they learn because they enjoyed it, as Isa mentioned. So I think this is the new approach now. People enjoy it, people are engaged. Sometimes they don't even realize that they're absorbing the information, but they do. So I think it's the next evolutionary level.
Thank you very much. Martin, how do you see the role of gamification in corporate learning? Do you agree with the other ones?
Yeah, well, for me, gamification is like looking at a problem from a game designer's perspective, and the key the core of that perspective is, of course, keeping people motivated. I mean, that's the core business of a game designer, and that's why gamification is so useful for us in the business context, and especially in learning, where motivation is always an issue, especially when training on the job during a very busy job. I think gamification has a very big role in it. I mean, it's still a mean to an end, so I don't want to position it as the only mean, but it's definitely one of the ones we need to discover more and research and see what we can do with it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Isa, do you want to add something to this?
Yes, there's also one important aspect of gamification, I guess, is that that people can fail. If you imagine how games are being developed, that you reach certain levels and you can try again and again, how many times as you want. This is something that people really like, because if they don't have the feeling that they can do something wrong when learning, they will probably do it next time again. So gamification is a very safe environment to fail and therefore to learn.
Yeah. Can I add something to that?
Sure, absolutely.
Well, that's why I find it very interesting to see how the gamification will progress in the coming years, because what's very important, of course, for a good learning experience to have that sense of safety and protection where you can practice with new behavior or new ways of working. And what I see now is that a lot of gamification systems or platforms or services are still very much focused on that competition, like with the leaderboards, with competing for points. I think that there has to change something over there, because that competition on an individual level can be very dangerous for your learning progress. So I'm eager to see how that progresses now that we have had the first hype stage of gamification, how we can mature in that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Robert, I think you wanted to add something to that as well, right?
Just one more thing, because I think we always talk about these generation questions. And now we mentioned, all of us, that this is the key is engagement, is how to engage people. Many people tend to say that this is rather for the X and Y generation. But let me recall an example that happened in my company with some clients 3 weeks ago. PwC organizes a CEO survey every year, and we did also in Hungary. And we organized a closing event when we invited CEOs. And we did not do anything else, just we had a small Gamifed solution for 5 minutes, transferring the most important messages to the CEOs who were present on the event. I was looking at these guys, CEOs with gray hair or with not gray hair or without hair, and they were really engaged, like all children, and they did not even realize, but they just absorbed the most important messages we wanted to transfer in the survey. So I think gamification can support learning on every level and every generation of works.
I think I've seen the pictures of that. Yeah, that was a great example, actually. Okay, so we've established that gamification is very useful in corporate learning as well, and I wonder what you would suggest to decision makers to consider before they start implementing it into their corporate learning processes. Martin, what would you suggest them to look for, to consider?
Well, first of all, they need to try it out themselves, of course. But that's I think that's basic. I think that what they need to consider is that one is it needs the same things as other learning solutions, and that is a good integration within the relevance of the people who need to learn. So it has to be very relevant in the context. What we are experiencing now with our gamified learning app is that because at the start we didn't make the right connections between that what we want them to learn and that they're already doing in the job and really integrated in their daily work, it's being seen as a nice to have and not as a need to have. So it's not just buying or building or developing a gamified solution. It's also looking at the complete total system of your employee. In what context is he working, and how can we integrate that gamified learning there? Because if you don't do that, then it's very likely to fail.
Thank you very much for the good advice. Isa, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I would say that you should never regard what you're doing as a short-term project. So you really have to think about changing your gamification learning approach from time to time, that it's still motivating. And especially, I guess, you should also have fun while developing it. Because if you integrate what you are doing and what fun you have, I guess it's much more motivating also what comes out. And what I would also like to add is that you should always consider that we have really different types of persons, and that it's not enough to only motivate one group like the achievers, for example. So in this case, you should always think that we have a lot of socializers out there who want to do something in teams, not individually. We have explorers who want to always find something and are very curious. And we have also the killers. So it's not good to motivate only one group, but be aware that there are different kinds of people and they all want to have fun.
Absolutely true, and couldn't agree more. Luckily, we don't have that many killers, because obviously then it would win the experience for everybody else in the short term. But very, very true to consider the different player types when you design, when you consider game design. Robert, do you have anything to add to that, maybe?
Well,
as a decision maker.
I think we need content, and I think probably that was something that Martin mentioned as well. So the game itself is nice, the game itself is entertaining, but we need the content. And sometimes I think the content itself needs much more development, or at least as much development as the framework. Yeah. And I think people will use it for, let's say, longer period, or they will come back and play again if they see, on one hand, the entertainment and the engagement, but on the other hand, the usefulness of it, which is coming from the content side. And I think, based on our own gamification development, I have seen enormous required effort from the organization. Because some people think that, wow, it's a nice tool, fantastic, and it's done, and we just have to use it. I think it's much more challenging to develop the right and proper content, and it needs a lot of internal resource and development, even from the management and from some dedicated people. So I think whenever you decide adding anything or entering this space, then you have to consider that this is not a solution that goes by itself. It will require a lot of energy and resource.
True, very true. Isabella, can you share with us any specific best practices that you could that you came across in terms of gamified learning experience, or maybe tell us what you do at SAP in terms of gamification?
Sure. I just wanted to add something to Robert, but it's okay. I can start with that one if you want. Okay, so in SAP we started with a G-Learning, which is like a world trip around the world. It's an online experience, and what the good thing about it is that we reached already 80 locations, so between 70 and 80 locations, and they were very glad because they never reached any training before. There was never a trainer was never sent to the locations, or they had only the boring e-learning. So our around the world journey really is 8 weeks training where teams get also points and badges, which I regard as important on the one hand, but it should definitely not be the only thing about gamification. So they have to develop an application in this 6 weeks. They have to learn, but on the other side, they really have to do something practical. They have to build an application and present it in front of their peers and also in front of a jury. So it's a combination of a gamified learning experience and something that they can really be proud of at the end of the 8 weeks. Sorry for the sounds here.
Thanks for sharing. It sounds really great. Martin, how about the experience at Rabobank? Or any other best practices you might have come across?
Well, what we, as I discussed before, we had an issue that we needed to share a lot of information over a longer time with our employees, with especially the mortgage advisors. And what we created was an app in which they didn't get all of the information, but they were continuously triggered by small challenges to check what their level of knowledge is, and if it wasn't high enough, they could of course go looking for sources to learn more by themselves. So basically, within that app, they earn their points, which they can invest in their small houses, and they can also battle with each other. In every challenge, we try to not just make the learning experience within the app, but also create bridges to the real world. So give them topics to discuss in their team meetings, or letting them look up some information in the learning systems. So the app is really a first point a first starting point for their learning experience. And because we have this learning program which takes over 2 years, we also use the app to let them slowly progress in their learning, and for that, of course, we use the gamification mechanics. And it works like Robert said before.
Martin, I think we lost you again. I hope you're... Yeah, I'm sorry, we lost your last 2 sentences again. Could you repeat?
Am I back again?
Yes. So you can go ahead and just repeat what you were saying. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Well, I want to add to what Robert said. The key is writing good content. So we've got good people who know a lot about the content that we need to share. They're good content writers, but they need to learn to be game content writers. So they need to add that whole motivational aspect within their in the assignments they write. And that's a real challenge. We really are struggling now in getting that content right, to put it in that framework, which is also interesting for a period of 2 years. So that's still a struggle. We're learning every day, but that's something we underestimated at the start.
Right. Thank you very much, Robert. We heard a really great example from you, a really great practice from the CEO survey. Any other ones that you might want to share?
Well, I can just promote again our multi-poly game, which is our internal solution. It's getting more and more popular. Probably the viewers who are returning heard about it, but probably for the new ones, I think it's worth to share. So we have developed a game for potential new, let's say, employees, so fresh graduates, when they can enter for 12 days a 1-year period of being a PwC intern. So they have to live the life of a young PwC person, and in the meantime, while they are just playing and solving the problems, they learn a lot of information about the company, they learn a lot of information about our profession, and they learn a lot of information about the company. And while they are just competing and enjoying it, they learn a lot. So I would say that anybody can try out the game in a couple of weeks, because it will be on the internet. So if you just want to see how it works, please, if you are managers, if you are whoever, just join it and try it out, because it's really something that you will enjoy. Of course, the winners can be only students, but we were students.
Absolutely. As I know, it starts next week, as far as I know. Is that right?
Next, I think it's, no, it's 6th of April or something like that. But
right.
I'm sure if anybody goes to multipoly.com, I think, or .hu, you will find it.
Great, thank you. Okay, as a summary or as a closing, I was hoping maybe you could share with us how you see the future, what you predict in terms of the gamified learning experience, or gamification in learning and development. Isa, can I ask you to go first to tell us what you hope for, maybe?
I hope for sure that gamification will be much more used than only by myself or a few guys in our company, so it will be much broader. What I see currently, unfortunately, is that a lot of people ask me how we did and what are the good tips, and they really go for a very fast way on gamification, and this is something I would really not go for. So definitely content is first, gamification is only around to motivate people This is very important, and I would not suggest that really everybody does gamification. A lot of projects will fail because of the fact that they think it's very easy and they don't have to think about gamification beforehand. So hopefully a lot of people are really interested in this content, and really we have more awareness on the topic generally in our company, because definitely we are still on, it's 3 years already, we are working on that, but we are still in the beginning, I guess.
Thank you. Martin, can you also tell us how...
Well, I think that... Yeah. Well, I think that now that gamification sort of is passing that hype stage, and it's now it really needs to prove itself. I think that's a very interesting and very good time, because now we can't just go with the usual platform and the usual services, but we really need to figure out ways to add that perspective to a normal work, a normal day of life. And also, I think in the future, gamification is going to be more about cooperation between game designers and non-game designers than just about products and platforms and techniques.
Let's hope for that. Thank you very much. Do you have any closing thoughts, maybe, Robert, that you would like to share with us?
Well, I have a thought, a hope, and a belief. So I think gamification will be here forever, I would say, because I think it was here always. Because we always like to play, but I think we were not there enough to connect business and games. Now I think people are getting more and more doing it, and I think that's why it will never disappear. So I think the future is here, and gamification will be around us for more.
Thank you very much. Very nice closing thoughts, and thank you all for your input, everybody. I hope our viewers found this a really useful conversation, and they can apply some of the thoughts that they have heard here in their business needs. We are going to say goodbye until our next Gamification Roundtable, which is going to be in April. In the meantime, you can meet with us and actually two of our guests in Vienna at the Gamification in HR Summit from the 27th to the 29th of April. And we appreciate all of your feedback, your suggestions for future topics, all questions with the hashtag Gamification Roundtable in our newsfeed. Thank you all for participating, and I wish you goodbye until our next time. Game on.
Thank you very much for your invitation, Peter.